Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
We're following breaking news on President Trump's search for a new White House chief of staff. Multiple sources now telling CNN that Mr. Trump is angry and feels humiliated after he was turned down by the vice president's chief of staff, Nick Ayers. This, as an apparent plea deal by an accused Russian spy, may also be raising Mr. Trump's blood pressure. It's possible, but not yet clear, if Maria Butina has agreed to cooperate with federal prosecutors or if she could advance the Russia investigation. But there's no doubt that the legal pressure on the president and his inner circle is ratcheting higher as the gravity of Robert Mueller's newest revelations sinks in. By CNN's count, contacts between Russia and at least 16 close Trump associates now have been exposed. This hour, I'll talk about that and more with Senate Judiciary Committee member Chris Coons. And our correspondents and analysts are also standing by. First, let's go to our chief White House correspondent, Jim Acosta. Jim, the president has plans to replace John Kelly as chief of staff. They've now blown up in his face.
They've blown up and he's furious about it. Well, President Trump stayed behind closed doors for much of the day, venting his frustrations about the Russia investigation and scrambling to find a new chief of staff after announcing John Kelly will be leaving that post or he even settled in on a replacement. A source close to the president says he is, quote, super pissed that one contender for the job, the vice president's chief of staff, Nick Ayers, suddenly pulled himself out of the running without the president having a plan B. President Trump is trying to convince the world where there is smoke, there is no fire. The president is downplaying the latest revelations in the Russia investigation, mocking any notion of collusion with Moscow, while declaring his innocence in the payments made by his former attorney, Michael Cohen, to women alleging affairs with Mr. Trump. The president misspelled the word smoking and tweeted, "Democrats can't find a smoking gun, no collusion." That's because there was no collusion. So now the Dems go to a simple private transaction, wrongly call it a campaign contribution, which it was not. Cohen just trying to get his sentence reduced. Democrats insist those payments may well be campaign finance crimes and potential grounds for impeachment.
Well, they would be impeachable offenses. Whether they are important enough to justify an impeachment is a different question, but certainly they'd be impeachable offenses.
If not impeachment, other Democrats say perhaps prosecution.
My takeaway is there's a very real prospect that on the day Donald Trump leaves office, this department may indict him, that he may be the first president in quite some time to face the real prospect of jail time.
The president is sticking to his talking points.
On the Mueller situation, we're very happy with what we are reading because there was no collusion whatsoever. There never has been. The last thing I want is help from Russia on a campaign.
As he denies collusion, the president is trying to clear up the confusion inside the West Wing. After announcing the departure of his chief of staff, John Kelly, while teasing he was on the verge of tapping a replacement.
We'll be announcing who will be taking John's place. It might be on an interim basis. I'll be announcing that over the next day or two, but John will be leaving at the end of the year.
The problem, the young, ambitious staffer initially eyed for the job, the vice president's chief of staff, Nick Ayers, said no thanks and revealed he's leaving the White House, forcing the president to start scrambling. But sources tell CNN other top administration officials aren't interested in the post, as in Budget Director Mick Mulvaney and Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin. GOP Congressman Mark Meadows has indicated he might take the job, and U.S. Trade Representative Robert Lighthizer is also under consideration.
It is Tuesday, the 11th of December of 2018, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam, and our daily special is Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. We need a little bit of warmth here. Yes, it's chilly outside. Well, at least where we are and where a lot of you are. Speaking of chilly, do you feel that icy wind off the Siberian steppes? I do. Maria Butina looks like she's going to go ahead and plead guilty. Let's not forget, she's a Russian disinformation officer for the KGB, so let's not forget that. But still, I didn't know that South Dakota was such a hotbed for Russian recruitment efforts. Well, they got that guy, Erickson, I believe is his name. They say powerful GOP activists. Well, some are more powerful than others. Speaking of more powerful than others, Pence's chief of staff turned down Donnie. You don't do that to Donnie. Even if Rick Ayers cannot quit. I'm sorry, Rick Ayers. I mean Nick Ayers. He just can't quit Pence. I don't think they can quit each other, actually. And a big question about Nick Ayers' background a little bit here. Now, of course, at the top, that was Jim Acosta from CNN reporting that Trump was super pissed that Ayers turned him down. You don't do that to Donnie. No. But getting back to Ayers' background, he somehow has made like some ungodly amount of money, like 56 million, 36 million bucks. I mean, some ungodly amount of money. How did he do that? And I don't know. He might have sold more than just a soul. Mm-hmm. I looked into it. I was not able to determine if he does have a pool boy business on the side. So we don't know. But he made a lot of money. And I've been telling people to follow the rubles. Mm-hmm. Mike McCarthy, the GOP minority leader now, not only is warning Democrats to not investigate Trump, because this is the guy that, led the Benghazi investigations, right? I mean, come on. They do this every time. Hold up judicial appointments, and then when you want to just ask a question of their judicial appointment, they're all, you can't do that. You're just trying to gum up the works. Yeah, talk about process crimes. But McCarthy is out there saying right now that not only is it not really a big deal that, Trump and his team met up with, 16 different Russians. If the FBI investigates GOP Congress and Senate, they may find that many of them have violated campaign finance law and will have to go. So at least, I got to say, McCarthy doesn't, strike me as being, the brightest bulb, really. But evidently he is much more self-aware than I gave him credit for, because that's what I've been saying. A lot of people have been saying there is so much Russian money awash in the GOP, they're going to have to go. What's on the rest of the menu here today? In the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. Well, Trump campaign's Hispanic outreach staffer was ordered to pay $25,000 for violating her non-disclosure agreement when she sued for racial discrimination. A lot of people have been wondering, well, wait a second, those NDAs aren't enforceable. Well, she was forced into forced arbitration. And the arbitration judge said, yep, $25K. You were told not to talk about what happened in there, even though there's a Presidential Records Act that precludes an NDA. We'll see how that one goes. 32 leaders of churches, mosques, synagogues, and indigenous communities were arrested by riot police at the border fence in San Diego. And 2 separate people were planning mass killings in Toledo, Ohio, until federal authorities managed to stop them. After the break, we then moved to the chef's table where Ryan Zinke used Thanksgiving to sneak a Koch advisor and party loyalist to be in charge of Freedom of Information Act requests to the Interior Department. There won't be any more Freedom of Information Act requests. Granted. And the FBI is now investigating election fraud by Republicans in North Carolina's 9th Congressional District. It just keeps getting worse and worse. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. At the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, you will notice to the rightish of the page the chat room link monitored by Kelly Lincoln, and we thank you, Kelly, for doing that. To the leftish of the page, at the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, you will then notice the contribute button, and if you could become a recurring Patreon of Netroots Radio, your recurring donation will keep the lights on, keep the modem blinking in the proper order it's supposed to be blinking, and we are truly unable to do this without you. We're in somewhat of a mini holiday fund drive, and thank you for your generosity, and thank you for your patience during these trying times. All right, you can follow Netroots Radio on Twitter at Netroots Radio. Thank you, Tom, for taking care of that platform. We're on Facebook, but everybody knows about Facebook, so you can check us out there. Follow me on Twitter at Justice Putnam. I post the show notes and links diary on Daily Co's about 10 minutes before showtime, and then I try to get the social media alerts right up after that. So check that out. And I need to mention once again is that the show notes and links diary is very important because they're show notes and links. Okay, why don't you go ahead and follow the show on Twitter at Cookbook West and pick up podcasts of Netroots. And pick up podcasts of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, YouTube, iHeart, iTunes, and wherever fine podcasts can be found. This first offering here in the Bistro Cafe at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays, by the way. Now, some people believe that you can put corn in chowder, and I'm a believer in that. So, and sometimes not. But if I were to put corn in the chowder, I'd roast it and caramelize it just a little bit. Just deeper flavor. Okay, so Matthew Chapman of Alternet brings us this first offering here in the Bistro Cafe. BuzzFeed News reported yesterday that Jessica Denson, a staffer on Trump's campaign who helped run Hispanic outreach, was ordered in a secret arbitration proceeding to pay a 5-figure settlement to the campaign for filing an anti-discrimination lawsuit against them. The award to the Trump campaign came out of arbitration. In other words, when you sign a non-disclosure agreement, you've given up your constitutional rights. And if you work for a dictator, you're not going to have constitutional rights, because they always say if you're going to run government like a business? Business isn't a democracy. What is it? It's a dictatorship. How many times have I heard that before? So I'm not shocked. But government is not run like a business. Government is run by the constraints of a constitutional representative democratic republic. Well, she filed 2 lawsuits against the Trump campaign and was ordered to pay $25,000 to the campaign in October, but the award was not made public until Dennison's lawyers included it in court filings in New York County Supreme Court in late November. The documents obtained by BuzzFeed News this week were not filed electronically. The award payment is part of a complicated, ongoing legal battle between the Trump campaign and Dennison, who, according to her court filings, worked on the campaign as a national phone bank administrator and as director of Hispanic engagement. Denson sued the campaign in New York County Supreme Court in November, claiming the officials discriminated against her, cyberbullied her, and were otherwise hostile toward her. It did not include any allegations against Trump personally. She sought $25 million in damages, but the Trump campaign claimed that Denson's lawsuit violated the terms of her non-disclosure agreement, which prohibited her from disclosing confidential information, disparaging the campaign, competing with the campaign, or violating its intellectual property. Wow, that's an oxymoron if I ever heard one. The NDA gave the campaign the power to take issues that arose under the agreement to arbitration, and so the Trump campaign went to the American Arbitration Association and initiated the arbitration case against Denson, which has taken place behind closed doors, and she has declined to participate. Good for her. This is not the first time the campaign has tried to silence a former staffer with an NDA. In 2016, the campaign sought $10 million against that wacko Sam Nunberg. Oh, I'm sorry, that's in this reporter's opinion. And he's not wacko, he's just a little jittery. And they wanted, Nunberg allegedly leaked an argument between former campaign manager Lewandowski and spokeswoman Hope Hicks. What happens to the family stays in the family. And Nunberg was given testimony to Special Counsel Mueller as part of the Russia investigation, settled that dispute for an undisclosed amount. Trump's relentless use of NDAs with subordinates is unusual, but it reflects an impulse to keep the inner workings of his empire and his personal life secret. Much more famously, Trump directed his former attorney, Michael Cohen, to give $130,000 hush payment money to porn star Stormy Daniels. We have to stop calling her a porn star. Maybe erotica practitioner. I like how that sounds. Stormy Daniels to keep her affair with the then candidate quiet. An illegal move which has Cohen facing serious prison time and put Trump himself on questionable legal ground. It's occurred to me a couple of times here this morning that if Trump is having such a hard time securing a chief of staff, just get it over with and, put Deripaska in as chief of staff. I mean, you're really cutting out a lot of the middlemen. I'm serious. So just do that. I know he's under sanction. But that's probably a plus in Trump's orbit. They're certainly not going to get a Boy Scout. All right, this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy's Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays is by Marty Graham out of Reuters. Kneeling in front of riot police, 32 religious leaders and activists were arrested at the U.S. border fence in San Diego Monday during a protest to support the Central American migrant caravan. I think they're refugees, but that's just me. More than 400 demonstrators, many leaders of churches, mosques, synagogues, and indigenous communities, sought a halt to detention and deportation of migrants and for the United States to welcome the caravan that arrived in Tijuana, Mexico in November. Singing and praying, religious leaders moved forward in lines of 4 to 6, some wearing T-shirts reading, "Love knows no borders." They were handcuffed and led away by federal agents upon entering a restricted area in front of the fence. God, that sounds just like in The Great Escape. Remember, Holtz would throw his little ball over there by, check what the trip line would do, just to test it out a little bit. Remember that? Oh, you don't? I would think that The Great Escape would be a proper Christmas movie. At least in my childhood it was. As a Quaker who believes in our shared humanity, we are calling on the U.S. to respect the rights of immigrants, said Joyce Juni, General Secretary of the American Friends Service Committee, which has run a week of actions to back migrants. Wow, Quakers. Some sort of cult. I heard Ben Franklin was one. U.S. Border Patrol spokesman Theron Francisco said 31 people were arrested by Federal Protective Services for trespassing, and one was arrested by Border Patrol for assaulting an agent. Yeah, we'll see about that. The arrest marked the second confrontation with U.S. authorities since the caravan reached Tijuana. Border Patrol agents fired tear gas at migrants on November 25th as they said they had stones thrown at them. Oh, really? Thousands of migrants are living in crowded shelters and encampments in Tijuana after traveling from Central America to escape poverty and violence. They may have to wait weeks or months to claim asylum at the U.S. border. Data released on Monday by U.S. Customs and Border Protection showed asylum claims at the U.S.-Mexico border rose 67% in the 2018 fiscal year from a year earlier. Maybe the better tact would be to just process them like they're supposed to be processed, quietly. Some will be admitted, and lots won't. Chapman of Alternate again brings us this next offering, which just happens to be the final offering here at the Bistro Cafe at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. The FBI announced the arrest of 2 people in Toledo, Ohio, who were each planning 2 unrelated terrorist plots that could have resulted in mass casualty events. The arrest occurred just 3 days apart. The first arrest on Friday was of Damon Joseph, a 21-year-old man from Holland, Ohio, who pledged his loyalty, allegedly, they say, to ISIS and planned an anti-Semitic mass killing. According to the FBI, Joseph is accused of pledging a support to ISIS and plotting attacks on 2 synagogues in Toledo. He is charged with 1 count of attempting to provide material support to ISIS. He was arrested Friday after purchasing 2 AR-15 rifles from an undercover agent. In a matter of months, Damon Joseph progressed from a radicalized virtual jihadist to attack planner, FBI acting special agent in charge Jeff Fortunato said in a statement. He ultimately decided to target 2 Toledo area synagogues for a mass casualty attack in the name of ISIS. Damon's arrest comes weeks after a horrific mass shooting at the Tree of Life Synagogue in Pittsburgh, carried out by a neo-Nazi who was active on the online hate speech haven Gab. The FBI reports that anti-Semitic hate crimes rose 37% between 2016 and 2017. That's in 1 year. Just before the FBI announced Damon's arrest yesterday, a second plot in Toledo was also foiled, this time of 23-year-old Elizabeth Lacron. Now, we would normally say Lacron, but she's in Ohio. They say Lacron. Agents reported she had stockpiled an AK-47, a shotgun, handguns, and materials that could be used to construct pipe bombs, and say she was supposedly planning to attack a bar. Wow. Well, I don't know. She sounds white. I thought they were allowed to have all of those things now. Maybe not. Authorities allege Lacron, a resident of Toledo, expressed admiration for mass murderers, even calling the 2 teenagers who killed 13 people at Columbine High in 1999 godlike. Wow. I guess she didn't like Mondays. It's going to be a lot of fun, and I can't wait to post pictures, she wrote on social media ahead of a visit to a memorial for the Columbine shooting in Colorado this past summer. Authorities say Lacron also exchanged letters with Dylan Roof, the white supremacist who massacred 9 black worshipers at a Charleston, South Carolina church in 2015. Roof is in an Indiana prison waiting execution, according to a U.S. Attorney's Office press release. According to a U.S. Attorney's Office press release, Lacron also attempted to send Roof Nazi literature. Well, Sieg Heil, Fräulein. Lacron also had a Tumblr account called Charleston Church Miracle, in which she posted photos and comments about mass shootings. Either of these attacks could have had the potential to become large-scale tragedies if federal authorities had not intervened. Well, that does bring us to the end of our... All right, let's get to our break, and when we come back, we, of course, will go through the weather from around the world, because there's weather, and it's from around the world. Literally. And we will finish up with the stories that we have curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Take Two Movie Review. I'm Clinton Johnston. This week, boy oh boy. At the very end of the 19th century, with the science of psychology in its infancy, early head doctors first looked at homosexuality as a mental disorder, one which they tried to cure. Welcome to the start of gay conversion therapy. Starting with hypnosis, doctors quickly moved on to harsher methods including electroshock and surgical mutilation, all in the erroneous belief that you could change someone's sexuality. Finally, after almost a century of abuse and torture, in 1974, 5 years after the Stonewall riot, the American Psychiatric Association declassified homosexuality as a disorder. Sadly, that act did not stop some mental health professionals and many non-mental health non-professionals. That's where Gerard Connolly found himself in 2004, 19, the son of a Baptist minister, and gay. His 2016 memoir, Boy Erased, tells the story of his time in gay conversion therapy, and, of course, it has become the source material of the movie by the same name, starring Lucas Hedges, Nicole Kidman, Russell Crowe, and the movie's writer and director, Joel Edgerton. Fresh off his 2015 feature directing debut, The Gift, Edgerton delivers an understated yet powerful movie in Boy Erased. Indeed, it's hard not to tug heartstrings with material like this, and the strength of the story may be why Edgerton chose to tell it with such a quiet tone. Just one aspect of a very carefully made film. From lighting to shot composition to depth of field and even costume design, you can see Edgerton and crew making smart decisions to put you with the lead character, Jared, and to keep you in his story. With our current vice president being an opponent to LGBTQ lives, there's no better time for a film about the horrors that people can inflict through ignorance, fear, and a fervent toxic dogma. This has been Take Two Movie Review. I'm Clinton Johnston. Catch up with us at TakeTwoMovieReview.com and feed us back on our page on YouTube.
This is Scientific American's 60-Second Science. I'm Christopher Intagliata. If you go by ticket sales, the most popular film of all time is Gone with the Wind.
Frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn.
That is adjusting for inflation, by the way. But a movie's take at the box office is influenced by ad budgets, distribution, reviews, so box office may not be the best measure of a movie's cultural influence. To address that question, researchers gave movies the big data treatment by analyzing the complex network of connections among 47,000 movies on the Internet Movie Database, IMDb. The popular movie site tracks every time a film has been referenced or spoofed, featured or remade, all factors that indicate a movie's influence on subsequent films. And by analyzing those connections with a handful of algorithms, including Google's PageRank algorithm, the data scientists came up with a new number one. It's another 1939 flick by the same directors as Gone with the Wind, which has been spoofed more than 300 times and referenced by nearly 3,000 movies.
Toto?
It's The Wizard of Oz.
I have a feeling we're not in Kansas anymore.
Dorothy's Adventure was followed by the original Star Wars, the original Psycho, King Kong, and 2001: A Space Odyssey. The full ranking is in the journal Applied Network Science. The analysis does have limitations. It favors older films, and the underlying IMDb data have been shown to be biased towards Western movies. That is, the products of Western civilization, not shoot-'em-ups. As for Rhett Butler and Scarlett O'Hara, they still made the list, but down at number 19.
After all, tomorrow is another day.
For Scientific American's 60-Second Science, I'm Christopher Intagliata.
Hi, it's Tom. Could we humbly suggest your donation to netrootsradio.com? All we've got to run this 24-hour powerhouse of progressive resistance radio is what comes out of our own wallets. And you are our biggest donor. And it doesn't take much, $3, $5. Just go to the bottom of our netrootsradio.com page and hit our secure donate button. Heck, you can even make a recurring contribution. And you'll get a wondiferous pair of Netroots radio stickers for application to your backpack, your bumper sticker, or your banjo. Well, it's up to you which backpack you want to put it on. So donate what you'd like at the bottom of our netrootsradio.com's homepage. Because you are our biggest donor. Netrootsradio.com. Together, we are Resistance Radio.
It's time for Nicole Sandler's What's News from NicoleSandler.com and the Progressive Voices Network.
Time Magazine's Person of the Year title is given to individuals or groups considered to have had the biggest impact over the year, though not necessarily in positive ways. Yes, Hitler and Stalin were picked in the late 1930s. Time's editor-in-chief Edward Felsenthal made the announcement of the 2018 Person of the Year on the Today Show Tuesday morning. In third place was Robert Mueller. Donald Trump was number 2.
This year, it's not a person, it's a group of people that you're calling the Guardian.
As we looked at the choices, it became clear that the manipulation and abuse of truth is really the common thread in so many of this year's major stories, from Russia to Riyadh to Silicon Valley. And so we chose to highlight 4 individuals and 1 group who have taken great risks in pursuit of greater truth, starting with Jamal Khashoggi.
Jamal Khashoggi, yeah. Why did you select him?
This is the first time we've ever chosen someone no longer alive as Person of the Year, but it's also very rare that a person's influence grows so immensely in death. And his murder has prompted a global reassessment of the Saudi crown prince and a really long overdue look at the devastating war in Yemen.
There were also other journalists on your covers. Tell us about them.
The Capital Gazette in Annapolis, Maryland. 5 journalists killed in June. A gunman apparently aggrieved by the coverage. And the Gazette, one of the oldest papers in America, did what it's done since before the revolution and got a paper out the next day and continues to do so with courage.
A couple of other covers may have people Googling, saying, I wonder who these 2 people are. Tell us about your...
Maria Ressa is really an extraordinary individual who has relentlessly pursued the current story in the Philippines. Of course, the rise of autocrats around the world, one of the major themes of the year. And she has exposed Duterte's propaganda machine, the extrajudicial killings, and she's been a legal target in the Philippines, currently under indictment in what many perceive as retribution for her reporting.
In a similar story, 2 Reuters reporters in Myanmar who are currently in prison.
2 amazing reporters, Wa Lone and Cha So-u, who exposed a mass killing of 10 Rohingya Muslims in Myanmar and are in prison actually a year to the day tomorrow as a result of their reporting.
The United States Supreme Court on Monday declined to review lower court decisions that blocked 2 states' efforts to disqualify Planned Parenthood clinics from public Medicaid funds.
The Supreme Court effectively handing Planned Parenthood a victory in this case, really keeping in place 2 lower courts' opinions, saying that states cannot terminate Medicaid funding for any Planned Parenthood affiliates that provide preventative care for low-income women. So definitely a win for Planned Parenthood, but this wasn't your typical opinion. This was the Supreme Court saying that they are not going to be taking up this case. Instead, leaving in place the 2 lower court opinions that said that states violate federal law when they do terminate this Medicaid funding. Justices John Roberts and new Justice Brett Kavanaugh sided with the liberals in this case, deciding not to take up this case. And the 3 conservative justices, the solidly conservative justices of Clarence Thomas, Samuel Alito, as well as Neil Gorsuch, they all issued a dissent here saying that the Supreme Court should have taken up this case. Justice Clarence Thomas issued somewhat of a stinging dissent, saying the only reason the Supreme Court decided not to take up this case was because it involved the phrase or the words or the organization Planned Parenthood.
A bipartisan group of 44 former senators released a forceful editorial urging current members of the chamber to protect the rule of law and be steadfast guardians of our democracy. Former Senators Democrat Chris Dodd and Republican Chuck Hagel organized the effort to get those 44 former senators to sign the letter. Unfortunately, current Republican senators seem disinclined to do anything when it comes to Trump oversight, as Senator Orrin Hatch proved when he spoke with CNN.
Well, I think the Democrats will do anything to hurt this president, anything. And what happened before he was elected president, is one thing. But since he's been elected, the economy's done well. Our country's moving ahead. We're in better shape than we were before he became president. And I think we ought to judge him on that basis.
But this is not the Democrats. This is the Southern District of New York, the U.S. Attorney. I mean, that's what's making this allegation.
Do you think he's a Republican, do you?
Well, he's appointed by the president.
Okay, but I don't care. All I can say is he's doing a good job as president.
The administration is expected today to unveil a plan that would weaken federal clean water rules designed to protect millions of acres of wetlands and thousands of miles of streams nationwide from pesticide runoff and other pollutants. That, as the world's largest climate change conference, the UN's COP24, is happening in Poland. The aim of the gathering is to meet an end-of-the-year deadline for agreeing on a rule book on how to enforce action to limit further warming of the planet. The United States, Saudi Arabia, Russia, and Kuwait were against welcoming the findings of the report, and reference to the IPCC report was removed. Trump's top White House advisor on energy and climate was protested and mocked as he embraced coal and other dirty fuels at the event otherwise dedicated to saving the world from the catastrophic effects of climate change.
I got good news.
And that's just a bit of what's news for now. I'm Nicole Sandler. If you appreciate these reports and the Nicole Sandler Show, I hope you'll consider making a contribution. My work is 100% listener supported, and I can't do it without your help. Find out more at NicoleSandler.com/donate.
This is Solidarity News on Radio Labour.
This is a Radio Labour report recorded on Tuesday, December 11th, 2018. I'm Mark Belanger.
The worst boss of the year.
That is Sharon Burrow, the General Secretary of the International Trade Union Confederation. The ITUC is the global organization which represents national union centers, such as the AFL-CIO in the United States and the British Trades Union Congress. It announced the winner of its 2018 Worst Boss of the Year at its recent Congress in Copenhagen.
Now, there were 10 shortlisted candidates. There was Amazon, terrible company. Bolloré, terribly anti-union. Glencore, absolutely brutishly anti-union. Uber, denying its responsibilities for working people who they are directly responsible for making profits from. Samsung, Deliveroo, and Walmart. Then there is indeed the president and CEO of the Marriott International. As we went through this list, we also had Harvey Weinstein. Now, he was the former CEO of Miramax. You know why he's on the list. The 2018 winner goes to a man who says for the last 30 years, hell would freeze over before there would be unions in his company. It's a man who built his company on low cost, low wages. It's a business model which exploits workers, and he knew it from the beginning. It's a man who fired workers for forming a union, a man who faced the biggest walkout in its history this year. It's a man called Michael O'Leary of Ryanair, the low-cost airlines, the bottom feeders which flies throughout Europe. This is a company who wants to control workers' lives, abuse and exploit the working conditions of our members. Well, we will not have it. Michael O'Leary, we award you the Worst Boss of the Year 2018.
The global union which represents aviation workers is the International Transport Workers Federation. The ITF has been trying for years to win collective bargaining rights for Ryanair workers. Steve Cotton is the ITF's General Secretary.
There's been 9 strikes by individual workers all over Europe at the dissatisfaction of their treatment. In the ITF, we're very proud of our transport sectors. We're very proud of the professionals in aviation. But we're not proud, and we won't accept the unfair treatment of the Ryanair workers. It's absolutely critical that Ryanair respond not just to their workers, but also to their shareholders about the practice of sustainability, secure jobs. Those men and women that work for Ryanair are proud to be in aviation, but they want dignity in the workplace. And we in the ITF and the ITUC and all the other global union federations will do everything we can to support them to get good collective bargaining agreements. All across Europe, whether it's the smallest airport that Ryanair use or one of the biggest ones, the ITF and the unions and their workers will recognise his title as the worst boss and will continue to promote and fight for the rights of the Ryanair workers. So I just want to thank the ITUC members for making the right decision. There's probably too many transport companies on your list, Sharon, and we'll take them one by one too. But for the ITF, this is a benchmark moment. This is an opportunity to highlight what isn't acceptable. And Michael O'Leary, we're coming for your workers, and we're coming to make sure they have dignity and self-respect, and health and safety is paramount in all transport sectors, and in particular in aviation. So I just want to thank the ITUC for promoting the Ryanair campaign and the abuses of the employment, and the work continues. 1 year ago, they agreed to recognise unions. 1 year ago. And now we've got nearly 50% in some case of dialogue or recognition. That means there's 50% to go, and we're coming for them.
And that's it. International labor news you can use. I'm Mark Boulanger. Thank you for listening. And remember, it's all about global solidarity.
From UN headquarters in New York, I'm Luke Vargas with your World in 2 Minutes. French President Emmanuel Macron attempted to reason with a disgruntled public on Monday, announcing a slate of economic reforms 2 days after riots crippled Paris for a third consecutive weekend. Macron described ongoing Yellow Vest protests as a mix of legitimate demands and a chain of unacceptable violence, the latter of which had to stop immediately. More than 1,000 people were arrested in Saturday demonstrations that forced hundreds of Parisian retailers to close shop. An estimate last week of $1 billion in lost retail and tourism receipts due to the protests now looks conservative, as riots over the last weekend put landmarks like the Eiffel Tower, Louvre, and the Bastille on lockdown. Protests began last month over a new gasoline tax condemned by critics as a symbol of how out of touch bike-riding Parisian lawmakers are about the car and truck driving habits of the rest of the country. It turns out Macron's first concession to protesters, scrapping the gas tax last week, did little to pacify a movement that now includes among its demands a progressive tax structure, a ban on outsourcing jobs, and the immediate halt to the closure of government properties in less populated parts of France. Macron had none of those remedies up his sleeve. Instead, he unveiled a €100 per month increase in the French minimum wage, roughly equivalent in dollar terms to a 75-cent increase in the hourly wage. Macron also called upon employers to give workers a tax-free holiday bonus this year and said poorer retirees would be spared a planned tax increase on their pension withdrawals. The coming days will tell whether those reforms are enough to quell popular discontent, but the Yellow Vests are unlikely to be satisfied by any political gimmicks. And critics have already charged that Macron's minimum wage promises are the same old political smoke and mirrors that brought them to the streets in the first place. Luke Vargas, the United Nations.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. We always begin, whether from around the world, along the banks of the Rogue River and the Rogue River Valley of southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 37 degrees Fahrenheit. We are having a light drizzle. It's not freezing where I'm at, and I can't tell if it's freezing up on the ridge crest because there seems to be a cloud covering it. Some people might call it fog, but I'm a little at altitude and it seems like a cloud. Well, we are expected to be a bit cooler today, topping out at a high of 46 and an overnight low of 36. Well. As I said, we have a light drizzle right now, expecting not quite a tenth of an inch, and we will have not quite a quarter of an inch tonight of that water that falls from the sky. I live in Oregon, you know. Right now, winds are light and variable out of the east-northeast. Will be shifting tonight out of the west-southwest at 10 to 15 miles per hour. Will then be light and variable tomorrow morning, rain lessening, and but we do have some other rain in the offing. Pollen is rated as none. The air quality index is notched a bit lower than yesterday at 55 parts per million. Moderate is considered the range, but not healthy for those with breathing problems, so take care. And the daytime UV index is rated low at 1. Barometric pressure is 30.25 inches and rising. Visibility is down to 6 miles, and relative humidity is 92%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchase. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. London is 47 and sunny. Wow. Paris is 46 and mostly cloudy. Rome is 52 and fair with heavy winds that could disrupt infrastructure. Kiev is 34 and cloudy. Kabul is 31 and fair. Oh, fair if you're not in a wedding party. Hong Kong is 56 and clear. Tokyo is 38 and rain. And they have a weather advisory, and that just came up as we began the weather report, so let me take a gander at that. Yes, I still use that. Wow, gale warning. Okay, out of the west-northwest, and so take care about that gale warning in Tokyo. Sydney, Australia is 68 and mostly cloudy. San Francisco, California is 45, partly cloudy, with a dense fog advisory. And New York is a chilly 36 degrees Fahrenheit. And bright and sunny as a crisp, chilly New York soon-to-be winter day should be. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. Alan Pike of Think Progress brings us this first amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Well, it looks like if you're going to file a FOIA request at the Interior Department, you're going to have a hard time getting them to be viewed favorably since, well, a Koch loyalist is now part of the team. After attracting more scandals in 18 months than his four predecessors managed in 16 years, Interior Secretary Ryan Zinke quietly shut the door to further public scrutiny of his office over the Thanksgiving break. I wonder if he flew a flag over this latest change. The Secretary gave control of incoming Freedom of Information Act requests to former Koch Industries advisor and longtime Zinke consigliere Dan Giorgiani in an order dated November 20th, but first uncovered Monday, and that was yesterday afternoon, by the way, by the Center for Biological Diversity. He's doing it secretly. He didn't fly a flag. Maybe he did fly a flag, and that's what caused people to wonder, what the heck's going on? Zinke's first move on Tuesday before Thanksgiving is best understood as a reshuffling of his resources from attack to defense. Giorgiani has worked for the agency since at least May of 2017, serving as the chief lawyer, putting Zinke and Trump's agenda into black letter policy action. He worked with energy industry interests to pen the rollbacks of Obama-era regulatory decisions, protecting migratory birds, and rejecting a mining proposal at the edge of Minnesota's boundary waters. Well, how nice. Roll that back. Well, the black guy wanted it. Gotta change that. As Zinke's management of the department drew scandalous scrutiny, like so many other Trump cabinet secretaries, Zinke appears to play fast and loose with ethics rules governing travel costs. Now, Giorgiani wrote to a colleague that Interior staffers' primary responsibility is to protect Zinke from negative press. Really? He will now be the central gatekeeper of the agency's documents when journalists, watchdogs, and other citizens seek insight into the conduct of their government. The appointment follows Zinke's much-criticized attempt to replace the department's inspector general with the same Trump administration employee who previously helped Ben Carson spend tens of thousands of taxpayer taxpayer dollars, a new decor for his Housing and Urban Development Office. Zinke appears to have taken one lesson from that experience. When replacing professional oversight and transparency officials with political allies, it's better to do it over a holiday weekend. Though courts often frown on bad faith invocations of executive privilege and other exceptions to FOIA law from government officials, an initial rejection from a FOIA officer typically buys many months of delay if a judge later orders public servants to hand over the documents. Oh, he's going to try the delaying tactic. He wants to wait everybody out. Well, it seems like Giorgiani is likely to be busy. As of late August, there were 15 separate active investigations into Zinke's conduct atop the agency in his first 541 days in office. And the same tracker records 11 official investigations of the past 4 heads of Interior combined over roughly 16 years of service. Now, to be fair, Zinke has also put a big buck hunter game in the employee cafeteria at Interior headquarters.
Je te donne c'est mon amour pour la vie entière. La promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle. C'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer. Mes automnes, quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers, c'est tout.
Oliver Willis of Share Blue Media helps us finish out here at the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. Oh, guess what? The FBI is now investigating election fraud by Republicans in North Carolina. Lauren Freeman, the district attorney for Wake County, confirmed in a statement that the FBI has indeed gotten involved. State election officials also said that they've been working with the FBI, as well as the U.S. Attorney for the Eastern District of North Carolina, Robert Higdon. Mark Harris, the Republican candidate in North Carolina's 9th Congressional District, had a slim lead over his Democratic opponent Dan McCready, but the state election board declined to certify the result due to evidence of fraud, which included Harris winning a suspiciously high number of absentee ballot votes in at least one county. Leslie McRae Dowlis, an operative hired by Harris's campaign, has been implicated in directing an operation to illegally harvest absentee ballots. He allegedly hired people to go door to door collecting real absentee ballots from real voters and then throwing those away or, just filling out the votes and handing them in. McCready had withdrawn the concession he offered Harris and is now preparing to run in a special election. I don't think there should be a special election. I think it should be given to McCready. There's no do-overs. Count the votes, he wins. Well, I don't know. Republicans at both the national level and in the state have been under fire as details of the scheme have emerged. After years of promoting completely made-up stories about in-person voter fraud, Republicans suddenly cannot be bothered to care about the very real allegations of election fraud committed by their own party, and now the FBI is involved. All right, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day. But Netroots Radio broadcasts on. We'll meet up here tomorrow for Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks. And we'll meet up with you here, right here, tomorrow in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théâtres, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Coër. Je voudrais toujours te plaire, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum.